On the afternoon of June 30, 2026, Rush arrived at Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas for a sound check. Alex Lifeson walked out to the production desk. And then he posted a video to social media that Rush fans did not want to see. He looked tired. He looked genuinely worried. And he said, during soundcheck, Geddy could barely speak, let alone sing. Laryngitis and bronchitis, both at once. The voice that has anchored Rush's sound for 55 years, that distinctive, extraordinary instrument that critics struggle to describe for decades, and that fans either loved immediately or grew to love over time, was simply not there. Gone, the doctors said rest. And Rush, being Rush, immediately rescheduled both Fort Worth shows rather than ask him to push through. The June 30 show moved to July 11. The July 2 show moved to July 13. After more than 50 years of live performances, the band's official statement read, "We refuse to take the stage unless we can deliver our absolute best." 50 years. The absolute best. Every night. That sentence deserves more attention than it usually gets. Because the question of what the absolute best actually demands from Geddy Lee, physically, technically, night after night, is one of the most remarkable stories in the history of live rock music. Let's talk about it. To understand why Geddy Lee missing a show due to laryngitis matters in a different way than most singers missing shows. You have to understand what his voice actually is and what it has to do. Gary Lee Weinrib was born on July 29, 1953. In North York, Ontario, he grew up in a household shaped by his parents' experiences as Holocaust survivors who had emigrated from Poland, a weight that informed the seriousness with which he approached everything, including music. He discovered rock and roll through his neighbor Alex Lifeson, and they formed the earliest version of Rush together as teenagers. His voice, from the beginning, was unusual. Technically, vocal analysts categorize him as a high tenor with an exceptionally bright, twangy coordination, a sound that places most of his melodies significantly above the typical male vocal comfort zone. His estimated full range spans from C3 to B5, nearly 3 octaves, with his signature in the upper register where most male rock singers either push dangerously hard or avoid entirely. In his peak era, roughly 1974 to 1982, Geddy Lee was singing notes that few rock vocalists could approach without risking damage. He sang them night after night during some of the most grueling touring schedules in rock history. The fact that his voice survived intact, evolving gracefully rather than collapsing, is not luck. It is a consequence of what vocal analysts call his technique. He relied primarily on reinforced head voice rather than heavy chest voice for his extreme upper register. By not pushing chest voice into territory it cannot safely occupy, he avoided the pattern of vocal deterioration that has ended or diminished many high-range rock singers by their 40s. As he moved through the 1980s and 1990s and 2000s, his voice settled into a lower, warmer register, something that many listeners found more accessible and that he embraced rather than fought. The change was managed. The instrument evolved rather than broke. But here is what laryngitis does to this specific voice. The inflammation of the vocal folds that causes laryngitis affects every singer, but it particularly affects singers who depend on the precise, high-tension coordination of those folds for their upper register. You cannot simply lower the key and muddle through. The very mechanism that produces the specific sound Rush requires is compromised at the source. He could barely speak, he could not sing. That is a medical fact, not a decision. The laryngitis story gets more complicated when you understand that singing lead vocals is not even close to the only thing Geddy Lee does during a Rush performance. Music critic Tom Mulhern, writing in 1980, described watching Lee perform and finding it dazzling to see so much sheer energy expended without a nervous breakdown. That description was accurate in 1980, and it remains accurate in 2026. At any given moment during a Rush live show, Geddy Lee is playing bass, not simple bass, but Geddy Lee bass. Intricate, melodic, rhythmically complex bass lines that function as a second lead instrument rather than a foundation. Bass lines that other professional musicians cite as influences and that beginning students learn as technical challenges. Bass lines that have to be played correctly, at tempo, every night, while everything else is also happening. Triggering synthesizer sequences with foot pedals. During Rush's most elaborate live periods, Lee used Moog Taurus bass pedals with his feet to run synthesizer bass sequences that freed his hands for other keyboard parts. The physical coordination of playing bass with his hands while running synth sequences with his feet simultaneously. is something most musicians would consider impossible to learn at all, let alone to do at performance level in front of an arena. Playing keyboard parts with his hands, between bass lines. In Rush's elaborate mid-1980s period, the keyboard rig became a third full instrument rather than a supplementary texture. Lee handled these parts live, in real time, within the same 2.5-hour performance. And singing lead vocals, complex melodic lines at high tenorial tessitura throughout the set. As one instructor quoted in his biography put it, few musicians of any instrument can juggle half of what Geddy can do without literally falling on their ass. The voice is the centerpiece of a multitasking operation of a scale that makes most professional concert performances look simple by comparison. When the voice goes, the entire architecture collapses. You cannot separate it out and replace it with someone else's. The voice is Geddy Lee. The voice is Rush. There is a trajectory that many high-range rock singers follow that is almost tragically predictable. They sing at the extreme upper limits of their range, night after night, on demanding tour schedules. The technique that gets them there, often heavy chest voice pushing into territory it cannot safely occupy for extended periods, creates cumulative stress on the vocal mechanism. By their 40s, the voice begins to show the damage. By their 50s, the most extreme upper notes are gone. By their 60s, if they're still performing, something has changed that cannot be recovered. Geddy Lee did not follow this trajectory. And the reason is the same reason his voice could evolve gracefully from the extremes of the 1970s to the warmer register of the 2000s, technique. His reliance on reinforced head voice meant that his vocal folds were not being subjected to the same compressive forces that damage chest-dominant singers. He was always working with the instrument's natural physiology rather than against it. He has also, throughout his career, been disciplined about vocal health in the way that professional singers are and rock musicians often are not. He has spoken about the care he takes to protect his voice when not performing, rest, hydration, avoiding the accumulated damage that comes from treating the voice as indestructible. None of that protects against laryngitis. Laryngitis is an infection. It does not discriminate between careful and careless. It simply inflames the tissue and leaves the singer unable to perform. But the 50 years of careful technique are precisely why, when Geddy Lee recovers from this, and the medical prognosis is good, his voice will return to the level the 50-something tour requires. He has not been burning through a finite resource. He has been a careful steward of an extraordinary instrument. The illness is temporary. The instrument, built and maintained over a lifetime, will recover. Rush's statement about the postponement contained a phrase that is worth unpacking carefully. After more than 50 years of live performances, we refuse to take the stage unless we can deliver our absolute best. This is not standard corporate PR language. It is a genuine statement of artistic philosophy that has defined this band since the beginning. Rush has, across 50 years of performing, developed a reputation for the consistency of their live shows that is genuinely exceptional in rock music. The Fort Worth truck delay that postponed the June 24th show, which we covered in a previous video, was, as they noted at the time, one of the only times in 50 years that they'd had to cancel or postpone. Not because they always felt good, not because Geddy Lee's voice was always at 100%, but because they made the decision, early in their career and consistently since, that showing up for the people in the seats was a commitment that required everything they had. The decision to postpone rather than push through the laryngitis is actually the same philosophy in action from the opposite direction. They refuse to take the stage unless they can deliver the absolute best, which means that when the absolute best is medically unavailable, they don't try to approximate it, they wait. That is not common in the touring industry. The financial pressure to play through illness is enormous. Promoters, venues, ticket holders, support staff, touring crews, everyone in the ecosystem loses money when a show doesn't happen. The pressure on performers to find a way, to manage it, to deliver something is constant and real. Rush postponed, rescheduled both Fort Worth shows, and asked for patience. Alex Lifeson's video standing there clearly frustrated and worried, telling fans what was happening directly rather than filtering it through a press release, was exactly the kind of communication that has kept Rush's relationship with their audience strong for 50 years. They treat fans as people who deserve honest information, not managed messaging. The Laryngitis postponement is, in the broader context of the 50-something tour, a brief pause in what has been an extraordinary story. From the opening night at the Kia Forum on June 7th, when Anika Nils dropped a stick during Xanadu and recovered it in milliseconds to a roaring standing ovation, through the 4 sold-out nights in Los Angeles, through the Juno Awards debut in March, through the sold-out Fort Worth residency, this tour has been one of the most discussed and celebrated live music stories of 2026. Geddy Lee is 72 years old. He is singing songs he wrote in his 20s, at a level that the reviews consistently describe as remarkably strong for a man of any age. The 50-something tour setlists include Tom Sawyer, Yais, The Spirit of Radio, Xanadu 2112. Material that demands the full voice, the full bass playing, the full keyboard work, all simultaneously. He has been doing it for 50 years. Laryngitis and bronchitis are setbacks, not endings. He rests. He recovers. He comes back. The rescheduled Fort Worth shows on July 11 and July 13 will happen. The tour continues. The remaining dates through North America, South America, Europe, and the UK through April 2027 remain on the calendar. And when Geddy Lee walks back out onto that stage in Fort Worth, when the voice that has survived 5 decades of rock touring and 1 bout of laryngitis in 2026 opens up on the first verse of whatever song opens the night, it will sound the way it always sounds, like nothing else. Here is what I keep thinking about when I think about this particular story. In 2023, Geddy Lee published an autobiography titled My Effin' Life. He toured to promote it, 19 dates across the UK and North America, doing something unusual for a book tour, actual performances, playing music from his catalog alongside the conversations. At 70 years old, with his voice. In April 2025, he released a 12-inch single of re-recorded demos from his solo album. In October 2025, he came back as Rush with Anika Nils. In 2026, he opened the 50-something tour at the Kia Forum. The man is not coasting. He is not warming a seat and collecting a check on name recognition. He is performing, at full intensity, the most technically demanding live show in rock music. And when his voice got sick in Fort Worth, when the instrument that has been at the center of everything gave out temporarily, he did what responsible stewardship of a lifetime's worth of craft requires. He stopped. He rested. He refused to take the stage. After more than 50 years of live performances, we refuse to take the stage unless we can deliver our absolute best. That sentence, in the context of everything this band has been through and everything they've built, is one of the most Geddy Lee things ever said about Geddy Lee. Get well soon. Fort Worth will be there on July 11. If you've seen Rush live, drop a comment about how Geddy Lee's voice sounded on the night you were there. And if you're going to one of the rescheduled Fort Worth shows, let us know. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.